Just because Chris Phillips wants to act like he's in control does not mean that we do not do live streams here when we have the overtime drive and news coming out around the SEC. What's up, SEC Unfiltered family? It's Cole Thompson and special guest Alex D. He is going to be joining us here for college football, for college basketball. So get used to knowing him. Make sure that also you give him a follow on Twitter. Give us a follow on Twitter real quickly if you haven't already. Make sure that you subscribe to the channel because we're on the race to 30,000 subs. We are ever so close to that number. We can't do it without you guys. College football never sleeps. The transfer portal is about to open on up. We have coaching search news. So this is the number one place you can come for all of your SEC content. Download the podcast version of the show, wherever you get your podcast listening systems. And check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. And as always, we are proudly fueled by our friends over at FanDuel. Go visit FanDuel.com/SECU. Get started today with $300 in bonus bets. Could be on the win totals for 2026. Could be on Diego Pavia's Heisman odds. Could be on any team winning the national title from the SEC. FanDuel.com/SECU. First $300 when you win your first $5 bet. Alex, what's up, man?
Excited to be here, Cole. Pumped to, get things going with SEC Unfiltered. So much news has happened today. The Michigan stuff has just kind of been crazy. I don't think any of us had that on our bingo card. I was not expecting, to get on here today with you and that be one of the first things we talk about. So very curious to see that whole just situation kind of keep unfolding and see who they pick up as their next head coach.
So, by the way, yes, that is not Chris Phillips. He does look a little bit different. Alex, tell the SEC Unfiltered family, who are you? Where are you from? What's your background? And why you love the SEC?
Love it. So I'm Alex Durtervie. I create content mainly around, I'd say, SEC. I went to the University of Florida, so go Gators. If you can see all the Gator gear behind me here. I am based out of Austin, Texas, but I travel and go to a bunch of different SEC places. I went to Kentucky for a game, went to the Swamp, and went to Austin to go see Texas play Arkansas this season. But really follow football, basketball, and baseball when it comes to the SEC, and just excited to be making content with you guys. So I will be doing the podcast for SEC Unfiltered when it comes to basketball content here soon.
So surprise, surprise. Chris was not here to make the announcement. Doesn't matter because I can tell you I can handle this stuff. So Alex D, and we have another guy, Brian. Can you say his last name? I don't know how to say it.
Shoot. It's Brian Era Sports is his stuff. I don't know how to say his last name either.
Great. Fantastic. We are off to a fabulous start when it comes to our basketball coverage, but they'll be starting a podcast soon over here. You also have Sierra Clark with SECT. So now is the perfect time to make sure that you are subscribed to the channel. Content tonight is bleeding out the eyeballs. We have coaching news. We have coaching searches still going on, and there are 5 teams in the SEC who are going to be playing for a shot at the national title. Let's break down one reason why every one of them can hoist it on up down in South Beach. But we start tonight with the news coming out of Ann Arbor. Sharon Moore, after 2 seasons, is no longer the head coach because he was fired for a probable cause. There was a releasement statement earlier today from Ward Manuel stating that Sharon Moore has been fired for probable cause after having an improper relationship with a staff member. There is more news coming on out as the minutes roll on by, so make sure you stay up to date with that on what is going on with the coaching search out in Ann Arbor and the current situation of what we have now known with Sharon Moore. But naturally, when this happens, there has to be a head coaching search, and hot boards start to run rampant. And naturally, a name that we thought was kind of done being in coaching searches is at the very forefront of the conversation, Alex. It is once again Alabama's Kalen DeBoer. Year 2 leads the Crimson Tide to an SEC title appearance, leads them to a 10-2 regular season, leads into the college football playoff. Yet somehow, some way, the Maize and Blue is looking to potentially poach him. There are other names mentioned. Jedd Fisch is one. Lincoln Riley out at USC is one. Jesse Minter, the Los Angeles Chargers defense coordinator, has been linked to the job. Joe Brady's been mentioned. You've even said maybe even Eli Drinkowitz. I think Clark Lee is a name that you have to at least bring on up. But it feels like all conversations start with Kalen DeBoer. When I think about this, dude, it just feels so interesting because you never really wonder about what happens with these coaching searches, but when it's this late in the process, if you're firing a guy like Sharon Moore, and I don't think that, there was a reason that you didn't want to keep him around. Again, justifiable cause on why you get out of the contract, but it always felt like he was not meant to be the long-term answer. Like I saw a meme earlier today talking about what was supposed to happen with Sharon Moore with the entire scandal that was going on. And they mentioned the Bane scene from the early part of Dark Knight Rises. They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. And it ended up being Sharon Moore sticking behind. They're now kind of cleared from that. He goes 9-3 in his second year. They're playing Texas in the Citrus Bowl. But now they feel as if they can strike for their main guy. When you think about this, you got to ask yourself, they got a target probably lined on up already, right?
I think you don't make a move like this without already having that next head coach in mind. It's like you're saying, I think he was just keeping the seat warm. He was never going to be the long-term coach at Michigan. And like I said, they're not going to fire him without already having 1, 2, 3 people in mind. Kalen DeBoer, that's kind of been the main name I've also been seeing everywhere. I do not think he leaves Alabama. I think that's ridiculous. Is it realistic? Like, could it happen? Who knows? Very small chance probably, but it could happen. Lincoln Riley wouldn't be surprising. Jed Fish. I have seen people troll Brian Kelly as well. With it being so late, it is really odd to wait to this point to be like, okay, now we're going to fire the guy.
So there's a couple things I'll say about the Kalen DeBoer thing. Number one, I did not think he was ever up for the Penn State job. As much as people want to go ahead and say that he probably was being a target, I never bought into it. This is one that I can at least say there is going to be a flyer out, and for good reason. Let's start off with the fact that, number one, Kalen DeBoer is a damn good coach. Whether or not you like him in Alabama, he is a really good coach that has taken his team to a national title appearance, now multiple playoff appearances, and a conference title in 2 of his 5 years at the Power 4 level. The second thing is, if he goes to Michigan, he gets to hit reset. Alabama fans think that going into year 3, if you end up having a sluggish closeout to 2025, you're going to be on the hot seat. A lot of people are not pleased with how the season ended. So this is your out to be able to say, I get to go ahead and revitalize my career and go to a program that maybe the expectations are still high, but not, hey, win the national championship or you're fired or on the hot seat every other season. The third thing is, this is a good coach. And the thing that people need to understand is that when you do a due diligent coaching search, you need to swing for the best. And Michigan's one of these programs that is a top 10 overall identity in college football. Their brand sells itself. They got to deal with Nike. They're one of the more prolific overall universities in college football over the last 50 years. Of course they're going to swing for Kalen DeBoer. Like, you'd be stupid not to swing for a guy like Kalen DeBoer. But at the same time, you're already at a prominent school. Do you really want to make a switch after this and start over for a new program to where, again, much like Alabama, there are high expectations. You are supposed to be able to go toe-to-toe with Ohio State. You are supposed to be competing alongside Penn State and maybe now Indiana for a Big Ten title and national championship aspirations. It's not a death sentence if you don't get there, but still, you're supposed to be competing for an opportunity to be considered one of the premier schools in college football. And again, the marketing sells itself. I think the fourth thing of why there is a lot of traction with this is, if Kalen DeBoer isn't happy, and I do think he is happy in Alabama, there are no ties to the state. He's from Sioux Falls. There is no relationship when it comes to what is the SEC region. There's a lot of expectations that are put on from the public eye, and there's a negative feel from a lot of fans that say, we don't care about Kalen DeBoer. If he leaves tomorrow, we'll be fine. We'll go get Lane Kiffin. Number one, you're not getting Lane Kiffin. Number two, Lane Kiffin's set up in Baton Rouge for a pretty penny. I don't think he's going anywhere to begin with. But when you're not respected, or you don't feel like that you're being honored for what you've already provided for a team, and everyone starts to live in this world of, what have you done for me lately? Well, I brought you to a college football playoff appearance, yet still, if I don't beat Oklahoma, you already want my ass fired. Then maybe you want to go to a place to where you know, hey, I can win here. And if I win here, people aren't going to be coming down on me or breathing down my neck every 5 seconds and asking, why did I do this? What was wrong with that? Why do I not have to change my black hoodie at death because I lost one game to a team that was really good, and we got very much a good spot to be able to beat them during the regular season? And because we beat them during the regular season, we were able to then guarantee our spot in the college football playoff. So a lot of things, like when it comes to the Kalen DeBoer conversation, I don't think he's leaving Alabama. I don't. But I see the reasoning behind it. I never saw it with Penn State. There's another caveat with this, Alex, I think is really important here. Michigan has already had their next man up. You're replacing a legend in Jim Harbaugh. He led you to a national title. He is Michigan man through and through, and they had their scapegoat. The rule is you never want to follow the big-time name. And for Kalen DeBoer, he followed Nick Saban. So now that you've already had the big time name and the heir apparent kind of fall in line, if you go on in, you kind of have a little bit more, I think, respect. I think a lot more people are buying into who you are. Like, I never believed that Sharon Moore was the long-term answer for a program like in a place like Ann Arbor. But Kalen DeBoer and who he is as a coach and his offensive identity and what he's been able to accomplish with quarterbacks and the way that he's been able to consistently win, that fits the criteria of what Michigan is looking for. And now that they've already had their fall guy, you are the guy. I think a lot of people are looking at that and saying, he's a really good coach, and we may want somebody else to come on and be the guy in place of Nick Saban, because he's the guy that's following Saban. We already had the guy to follow Jim Harbaugh. Now we got our guy in Ann Arbor.
I think, too, here, it's just if you look at Alabama compared to Michigan, at Michigan, I almost kind of have it after the whole Harbaugh, them winning their national championship. I view them almost in a Penn State way where they don't have to make the playoffs every year, but if they beat Ohio State, the fans are happy. They can lose 3-4 games every season, but as long as they beat Ohio State, you're safe. You know what I mean? Look at Ryan Day. They lose last year to Michigan. They wanted his head. So that is the one thing, like, say Clark Lee goes there, Kalen DeBoer goes there. They are not going to have that exact same, pressure on them like they do at Alabama. Bama, you lose one game, they're ready for you to go.
Yeah. Look, I mean, you and I both remember when they lost to Vanderbilt last year and everyone said, not the guy. But 2 weeks before, they beat the number one team in the country. And they handled business in the first half against them. And then they beat LSU. And LSU wasn't a great team last year, but they still were LSU. And you go into Death Valley last season and you beat LSU. But then you lose to Oklahoma and people say, well, you're not the guy. You can be the guy at a place like Ann Arbor. Now, the question turns to, at this point, if that is to be the move that happens. And again, countless moves have already transpired. This is the wildest coaching search that we've seen. And this includes just 2 years ago losing Nick Saban. I mean, at this standpoint, you figured there's not going to get any crazier. Knock, knock. 2025 is knocking on the door and saying, hey, we're ready to go ahead and make this thing a shit show. It is interesting to see who would you go after next, because Lane's not an option. And I don't think that Marcus Freeman is somebody that you can just immediately target and say, hey, leave South Bend, Indiana, just because you didn't go to a college football playoff and come to a place to where the expectation is you don't go to a college football playoff, your ass on the hot seat next year. But where do you go after that? So that's a really intriguing spot. This may be another domino effect if Kalen DeBoer were to leave. And I'm not saying he is. I personally don't think he will. But if he were to leave, you're probably opening 3 or 4 more head coaching opportunities around the college football playoff spot. That's just it.
If that happened, the chaos that would ensue would be insane.
Where would you go if you were to stay in Alabama right now?
To leave Alabama? Where would I go?
Where would you? No. Where would you go for Alabama's next head coach if Kalen DeBoer left?
Oh, gosh. I don't think Lane Kiffin would go there. I think at that point you almost do go for like a Marcus Freeman. I think you go for a big fish. And I think when you look at all the big fishes out there, you go for him. Kirby Smart's not leaving Georgia.
No.
So I think I think the only person you go for is him. You wouldn't want to go for Lincoln Riley.
No. Brian Kelly?
I'd almost go for Joe Brady, honestly.
You know who I would go for? And I'm being dead serious about this. And you're going to hate me in the comments section. I already know you are, because all of you love us here. I'd go to Nashville to call Clark Lee. He's beaten you. He's one of a handful that I can say in the last 5 years he's beaten you. I'd give him a phone call. I don't think he would take the job personally. I think he would stick around at Vanderbilt.
He loves Vandy.
He is such a Vandy guy through and through. But I would be very intrigued to see if you could go ahead and pry him away, just to see if he'd be a good fit. But ultimately, I think that Michigan may look at him. I think Michigan may look at Drink. I think that definitely Lincoln Riley is a name that's going to be brought on up. I don't mind the Jed Fish move. Like, people were talking about Jed Fish being like an underwhelming hire. I personally think it would be a really intriguing fit because you got Bryce Underwood on campus already, and you need to get somebody who can develop quarterbacks. That fits the bill pretty much like to a T. And it almost guarantees that if you pay him a little bit of money, NIL to stick around, he's going to be developed by a dude that understands what it takes to make it in the NFL. So there's definitely names out there. Gun to head right now. Who is the next head coach of Michigan?
Jed Fish, honestly. I think like he does. His family doesn't like Washington. Those have been the rumors for how long. I like what he's done at University of Arizona. Washington, he was even rumored to go to Florida.
Yeah.
And so I think if you're going to take anyone, I don't see Eli Drinkowitz just boom going there. I think Jed Fish, potentially him, keep him in conference. And then the same thing there. Lincoln Riley, I don't think would leave. But I think Jed Fish, that's probably someone that I think they can go grab and he would leave to go there.
I'm not going to push back at all. I actually agree entirely with you. I think that Jed Fish is probably going to be the option. I will say if there was a second one I would go with, it probably would be Lincoln Riley. And I think that the only reason why is because I've heard the exact same thing about him out in Los Angeles. He's not happy living out there. Florida was very much he was very interested in the Florida job when it opened on up. He kind of wanted to cut his teeth elsewhere. Michigan's cutting your teeth elsewhere. I mean, don't get me wrong. The expectations are pretty high in Ann Arbor as they are out in Los Angeles. But still, I think that, again, offensively, developer of quarterbacks makes a lot of sense. But I think you and I are in agreement, Jed Fish. How shocked would you be if it is Kalen DeBoer, though?
I would be very, very surprised. Alabama fans, even though they would say like, "Oh, it's okay," they would be furious. I don't think I would be at a loss for words, honestly.
I would not even be close to being shocked. I'd actually be like flabbergasted. That would be the first time in my life to where it truly did feel like that the end of Alabama's reign was kind of over. This would be the beginning, because you don't say no to Alabama, and you certainly don't say it's better than where I'm already at when you're at Alabama.
Making the playoffs regularly like they're doing right now, and like they're just making the team better and better. It would be very, very unwise, I think, for him to leave and go there.
To tell you the truth, I don't really care if he leaves or not. Alabama doesn't fit him or his offense. Alabama runs the ball. He passes it. Chad, I'll be completely real. I think that the reason why he doesn't run the ball right now is largely just due to the fact that they don't have the running back that fits Ryan Grubb's system. That's where I'm at. And I think that you will see him run the football very soon. There's some names that you really like, I think, coming on up. I think they'll target a name in the portal, but maybe you're not wrong. DeBoer is an excellent choice. Bama treating people like crap. That's my thing. And that's what I'm going to continue to go back to, dude. It's like Alabama fans are losing their minds after going 10-2 this year. Like, and I understand the standard at Alabama was always 11-1 at worst, at best 13-0. And you were supposed to win the SEC, and you were never supposed to lose the Iron Bowl, and you were never supposed to lose to teams like Vanderbilt. But sometimes that just happens, especially in a new day and age of college football where NIL is really prominent, and there are some things that you are just going to be out of your control. And I thought last year you needed to give them a mulligan simply because if you had to set yourself up for what was the long-term success. And I think that the version that we see of Kalen DeBoer right now, losing horrifically to Florida State, non-excusable, but it was a really good defense for Oklahoma. You had 3 turnovers, and honestly, you were better than Oklahoma in every category minus that one key element. That's where it is.
And I think the SEC in general, when it comes to coaching, we are seeing this pattern now. If you don't make it within 3 years, you're gone. Look at the pressure with LSU, Florida, Auburn even. That's kind of what we're seeing. And I think when you're looking at Alabama, they're doing, like, if you were to get rid of that coach or be happy with him being gone, all these other schools in the SEC would gladly take him.
I think any school in the country right now would look at their head coach and say, do we think that we could upgrade with a Kalen DeBoer? And I think that probably all but maybe 7 would say it at least is a conversation starter. And that's kind of the feeling that, you didn't have with Sherrone Moore up in Ann Arbor.
No.
You never were like, hey, look at Sherrone Moore. Are we worried about him getting hired elsewhere? No. And I think that was ultimately the sign he was not meant to be the head coach in the big house long term. But let us know in the comment section down below your thoughts on Kalen DeBoer, the rumors. Do you think he leaves for Ann Arbor, or do you think he is sticking around for the Crimson Tide long term after they face off against Oklahoma in Norman come Friday night? Game going to be televised on ABC. It's a standalone game. All right, Alex, let's go ahead and break down every single team in the college football playoff from the SEC. You got 5 rosters, all of which very much competitive, trying to win a national title this year. Georgia gets a first-round bye. You got Ole Miss hosting Tulane. You have Oklahoma taking on Alabama. And you also have Texas A&M taking on Miami. So what we're going to do is we're going to break down every single team and why we think they can win the national title. Could be because of offense, could be because of defense, simply just however you feel like they're built. Georgia's number 1. They don't play in the first round. They're 12-1. They beat Alabama. they punched them in the mouth and said, dude, we run the SEC now. We don't care about Nick Saban. We don't care about what happens with Kalen DeBoer. We're now in control of the conference. They're going to welcome in either Tulane or Ole Miss. They're going to welcome in Ole Miss. Their pathway afterwards is to face off either against Ohio State, Texas A&M, or Miami. What's the reason that you think that Georgia can win the national title this year?
They're just dominant on both ends of the football there. I mean, offense and defense, that team is just scary. And I think I'd say from week 4 and on, we've just slowly seen them progress and get better and better as the season's gone on. You know, what we just saw, I mean, we saw with it against Texas, right? In that fourth quarter, they were so dominant in that game there against them. And then Alabama as well this last week in the SEC championship. I have them actually winning the national championship. I think they are the best team in college football right now.
When you look at them top to bottom, I have the fewest questions. And I think that that's really what it comes down to for why they can win. They've answered all of the doubts and all of the critics really since the second half of that Ole Miss game. Because remember at the start of the season, they were a team to where the offense had to start fast because the defense was going to give up points. They gave up points against Alabama. They gave up points against Tennessee. Joey Aguilar had the most passing yards against a Georgia defense headlined by Kirby Smart in program history. So, again, they had their faults. But since that second half of the Ole Miss game, they have been dominant in the trenches. They've been physical when it comes to playing in coverage. They're not playing out of assignment. They're winning with pressures. They're not closing the gap when it comes to sacks. They did have 3 sacks against Alabama, but they slowly are playing the version of Georgia football that we're accustomed to seeing. And then you throw in the rushing attack. It's back to full speed. I think the wide receivers have done a really good job stepping out and up in place of Colby Young. And then you got to throw in Gunnar Stockton, who, to be completely transparent, he probably wasn't ever going to win the Heisman this year, but I would have at least invited him to New York. I mean, the way that he was able to play against Alabama last week, the way he was able to play against Texas, he had 5 incompletions and 5 total touchdowns twice this year. Twice against top 15 teams. Like, that doesn't happen for most quarterbacks. And so you add all that together, and then you throw in the defensive mind that is Kirby Smart. And I think that Smart is the best second half adjustment coach in college football, probably in the last 20 years. He learns from his mistakes, and he doesn't fault himself twice. And they can beat you in so many ways when it comes to the rushing attack and when it comes to being able to be methodical on play drives and third down efficiency. Nobody has been able to consistently keep punching at the same level as Georgia in the conference. You've had some close calls. Tennessee game, the Ole Miss game. I even throw in the Texas game because of the score set, though. It wasn't really that way, but still. Alabama's been the only one that has actually knocked them down, and they've kept them down. And then they got a rematch against them, kind of like we saw in Rocky 2, where you got to see, again, Apollo Creed get knocked down by Rocky. Now we're seeing this version of Georgia kind of hit its stride at the right time. And when you can't knock them down, I think at this point, they're the most consistent team in the playoff. And that's something that I think is going to play a massive role when it comes to decision-making, when it comes to overall blitzing packages, when it comes to how you want to go ahead and guard certain players. And they can beat you on all 3 stages of the game, especially special teams. That does not get mentioned enough. And by the way, Zachariah Branch is a human highlight reel. He has been special this year, and I don't think that we talk about him enough.
Now, Branch has been insane for that offense right now. It's just special teams, everything along that. Him and then Frazier, they have started to figure out really click, and that's what's made it so much fun to watch them as well. I'd say even like in the Alabama game, they're just like a throw away, right? They're a catch away. There's so many times they were just right there. And so with that being their only loss, and then we get to see them against Bama in the SEC championship, be dominant and actually play the football you kind of expected them to play from day one, I'd be afraid to play them right now in the playoffs.
If I told you right now, Georgia or the field, are you taking Georgia or the field?
Georgia.
Yeah. I don't feel like that's a hot take, even a little bit. It feels like that is the smart play if you're trying to make on a team from the SEC. Ole Miss, 11-1, 1 loss on the season. Came to Georgia, played really well in the first half. Then came the fourth quarter, and Trinidad Chambliss had his Jackson Dart moment where things just went south immediately. They weren't able to pick up drives. They were stalling. Play calling was a little askew. But 11-1, they don't have Lane Kiffin, but they promoted Pete Golding. The offensive staff is back. When you look at Ole Miss, Tulane round 1, Georgia round 2. If they get past Georgia, they have to play more than likely Ohio State. And if it's not Ohio State, it's Texas A&M or it's Miami.
It's A&M.
Do you think that there is a legit shot for Ole Miss to win the title? Why?
I think if their offense stays hot, that is kind of what's kept them in this whole time, is just their offense being amazing. Chambliss just going crazy. I will say that negative thing. It's like I was at the Florida game when Dart, famously started throwing those interceptions. He's crying at the end of the game. If Chambliss doesn't do that, I could see them making a run for it. I think the positive for them starting with Tulane first is a good thing for them, because they're going to have, that should be a nice win for them without Lane Kiffin being on staff. Kind of showing them, okay, we still have that mojo. We still have our offensive staff. We can do this without Kiffin here, which will give them that, I think, positive momentum against Georgia. Do I see them going past Georgia? I don't think so. I think Georgia's defense is just on fire right now, even with that offense. Now, Lacey, though, can they stop Lacey? That's going to be the other big key factor there, because Lacey's just been dynamite.
Surprisingly, Ole Miss's defense this year has played, I think, above its weight class from what we expected. Because remember last season, they had all that great defensive depth when it came to guys like Walter Nolan, and when it came to J.J. Pegues, and when it came to Princely Manley Ellen. Well, they're not built that way, but the numbers back it up. They're a top 40 run defense. They're a top 25 scoring defense. They're a top 30 pass defense. So they've done a good job of being able to mitigate, I think, a lot of the explosives and keep kind of things in front of them. They will every once in a while falter. And I think that that's kind of been the big area of weakness for them, especially in the Georgia game. They've had some small hiccups along the way. The Washington State game wasn't pretty. You didn't really have the best game plan, I think, at times when you faced off against Florida. You had to come back in that matchup. But I think you hit the nail on the head on a few things. The offensive staff is there. So automatically, you're not getting somebody who hasn't called plays before. And no, I did not think for 1 second that Charlie Wise is going to pull a Nate from Ted Lasso and be like, hey, I want to come back here and be a part of this. No, I'm like, John David Baker, we'll talk about him in a little bit. That was a really smart hire. You had to go bring in a new offensive identity. But I think that the fact is you still have that offensive staff there to where there's continuity. And that's something that's really important. You also have Charlie Wise Jr., who was calling plays at times this year. So you have your play caller to work alongside Trinidad Chambliss. They are a top 10 passing offense, and they are a top 10 scoring offense. So they're going to hang points on you if you give them the opportunity. And if they can start fast in most of their games, that probably is going to be really beneficial to them. I think that the other thing that you also brought up is that they played Tulane round one. The thing that we noticed last year when it came to the college football playoff is every team that had a bye did not win. So you get a tune-up game that you already played where your backups ran for over 200 yards in a 45-10 victory against the same team. And you also get a game to where you're going to be hot rolling into that matchup against Georgia. So those are two benefactors that I think are going to be really prominent towards your success. There are some limitations for the team, but if Trinidad Chambliss, Kewan Lacey can go ahead and make plays, do what we've seen on the consistent basis throughout the regular season, I'm not putting it past them to get an upset. I could see them easily handling business against Georgia if they play up to their standard. I don't know if they will, but I could see it happening. The question then turns to, do you think that they'd be able to beat Miami and Texas A&M? And if you definitely think that, do you think that they could beat, let's say, Oregon or Indiana or Alabama or Oklahoma or any of those teams? That's where you kind of are, or better yet, Ohio State, who you would be facing off against if they were to lose, if they were to beat up on Texas A&M or Miami. And I think that's kind of where it's the end of the road.
Yeah, I could see him potentially upsetting Georgia, but I don't see that far past that. And that's like the sad, like the honest truth I have for Ole Miss. Would love to see them make a run for it. I just don't see it.
Do you think at least it will be a competitive game in the matchup against Georgia?
I hope it is. I want all the games to be competitive. I don't want it to be just like very lopsided game. I think this, what you said earlier, if they start the game hot, I think it will be just a boom, boom. It'll be a gun match between both those quarterbacks. If they start slow, I think it's going to be very one-sided with Georgia.
Texas A&M, 11-1, losing the last game of the season. They did not look good, though, against South Carolina. Needed the biggest comeback in program history behind Marcel Reed to guarantee not a 10-2 season. They have an explosive offense when it's hot. They also are going to be healthy at the right time. There are going to be some things that you got to see change from Marcel Reed, so that's kind of a positive. But at the same time, there have been some lulls along the way. The matchup against Notre Dame, you also had kind of a sloppy performance at times against South Carolina, game against Texas, but it's still Texas A&M. They got a defensive-minded coach. They got the SEC Defensive Player of the Year in Cassius Howell on the roster. What's the reason to believe in Texas A&M to win the whole damn thing?
I think A&M beats Miami. I think they could also even beat Ohio State. That defense is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Now, I think this, if the defense that shows up against South Carolina and Texas in that second half shows up, they're not going to win their first game. But if their defense shows up and is dominant, they honestly do have a really good chance to make it all the way and win it all. I like Marcel Reed. I like this offense. Now, I think similar to Jackson Dart, we were saying earlier, once he gets a little stressed, he just starts lobbing that ball where he shouldn't be lobbing it. So I think if they can hold a lead or keep a game close, they have a really chance to win it. I don't see them making some crazy comeback here in the playoffs. I just don't see that happening with the teams that they're facing.
Number one, they have, in my opinion, the best offensive line or the most consistent offensive line of any team in the SEC. I will die on that take. When they play up to their standard, they have been the most consistent offensive line in the SEC, if not college football this year. So that's going to be good protection for Marcel Reed. The other thing is that they are expected to have, at least in some capacity, a Le'Veon Moss. And I believe when he is at his peak, Le'Veon Moss is the second best running back in the SEC, maybe at worst the third best running back. Ahmad Hardy and Jaden Barr are built different, but outside of them, I would go roll with the 8-ball. I think you also have two really good wide receivers that you brought on in for like games like this when you face off against a Miami that has a defensive line to where they're going to win their one-on-ones, and then you need to be able to get the ball in a quick fashion and let them win in the open field. Craver does that really well. Concepcion is a speed demon. I think even Terry Bussey does it a little bit, and Bethel Roman does it a little bit. So you have them. You also got Nate Borgature, a tight end. So you got a slew of weapons that are going to be able to work. And then you got Cassius Howell. And I'll be completely real. This is a really good offensive line for Miami. But Cassius Howell reminds me so much of like Jason Voorhees, where he's killing the kids at Camp Crystal Lake. And basically, he's just bringing the machete and he's killing quarterbacks every single drive. Like, he's got the mask and he's covered in blood, and it's just the scream of the victims that you can hear in the background. That's Cassius Howell. Like, he thrives off of that type of thing. And then the ability to win pressure downfield with the turnover ratio. They got an NFL player at every level of the defense. And that defensive, I think, consistency is going to allow them to play into a certain brand that keeps them afloat. And a defensive coach like Mike Elko is going to demand excellence. Like, he's probably pushing the kids to new levels that they've yet to even face. Like, they're puking after practice, especially on the defense side, because if they lose offensively, listen, you're upset, but you can say, it's not my side of the ball. Yeah. You lose defensively, that's on you. That's an epitome of who you are. So I think the defense is going to show on up. But you are right. There were a lot of faulty plays in the South Carolina game, a lot of faulty plays in the Texas game, and I don't think that you can come back against a team like Miami. I think if Miami can jump up to an early lead and they force some turnovers, you are going to need Carson Beck to kind of give you this game like he gave to Louisville. You're going to have to see that, because if not, Marcel Reed, he had two really, really bad throws in that matchup against Texas. It's very hard for me to unsee. But they have all the pieces there, including a quarterback that I do think is really good, at least for the college level, and fits Colin Klein's offense extremely well to where they can win against Miami. I think they can win against Ohio State. I think Georgia's where you kind of hit the bump in the road. Ole Miss, I think, will test them really well, but they'll be a really good matchup if that was to be the case. But there are some really intriguing matchups to where I think Texas A&M, it's a daunting path. Like, honestly, for them, they got one of the crappiest draws because Miami's playing hot. You have an undefeated regular season Ohio State team, and then Georgia, if everything else comes to plan, or Ole Miss, another 11-1 team that's ranked higher than you. But I still think that there's enough juice left in this team.
I think A&M is in the hardest path. Okay, beat Miami, then you have to beat Ohio State, then you most likely have to beat Georgia. That is a gauntlet of teams that you have to get through. I do think that Texas loss was almost a positive for them because I think it woke them up. I think now they're like, it's like you're saying with the practices, they're doing what they did in the swamp when they had Urban Meyer there. They're doing midnight practices, 2 a.m. practices. They're probably going crazy because they need to, like, hey, we need to wake up because we can't let what happened in that game in South Carolina happen in the playoffs. I do think we're going to see Carson Beck revert back to Carson Beck, and I think this defense is going to eat him alive. And so we're going to probably see some interceptions. You know, the defense is going to, I think, make some really, really big moves against Miami. And I do think, I mean, we saw what happened to Ohio State when they played a really good defense. I think A&M can do the same thing to them.
Bogdan's in the comment section. You're really selling the world champ short. Brother, I'm telling you, if you ask me right now, who do I think wins the national championship? I think the winner of the Georgia-Ohio State game in the semifinals is going to be it. Like, that's it for me. Aggie's going to camp and have a can of whoop ass on Longhorns. They called fishing soon. I mean, honestly, I could see them losing in the first round. It's a really interesting draw. If they come out slow, I think Miami could easily beat them. I think they really need to be able to kind of set the tone early. This is the team that you can't get complacent with. But you are right. Losing to Texas, I think, was a humiliating moment and a humbling one to get their minds right on what hadn't been working for the last few weeks to where they were able to right the ship in some prominent light before they ended up facing off against a team at Kyle Field. And they also got to be playing a little bit pissed off because they thought they were going to have a first-round bye. And now, and the worst thing is, they don't even get one of the two G5 teams, which that's going to piss them off as well because they're also 11-1. But hey, we get Miami or we get Notre Dame, two teams that feel like that they're trending in the right direction to close out the year. All right, Alabama. So Alabama's 10-2. Alabama's not looked like Alabama for literally the last month. You've seen the faults of Ty Simpson, some really bad, inconsistent offensive line play. They haven't been able to run the football well. Their defense is good. I wouldn't say it's elite. I'd go as far as say it's great, but it's definitely not elite. Your coach is now being rumored to be potentially in another head coaching search. And you're going up against a team that you lost to despite outgaining them by 200 yards because you lost the turnover battle. But it is Alabama. They are expected to get healthy. Josh Cuevas is supposed to be back. Jam Miller is supposed to be back. You do feel like that you are going to get better on the offensive line. You probably are going to get better when it comes to LT Overton making his appearance. You got to feel good about where Pierre is. You got to feel good about some of your depth in the defensive line. And it's still, again, it's Alabama who did outgain Oklahoma by 200-plus yards. And Indiana, we don't really know what to make of them at this point. Like, they feel like they're a really good team. I think they're a really good team. I personally think that that's probably where the story ends for either one of these rosters. But if it was to be the case, there's enough to like about Alabama when it comes to the overall makeup fully healthy and 2 weeks off to get mentally right to where you think that you probably can have this conversation of if they get hot in that Alabama game offensively, do they keep that momentum for the next 4 quarters? And then they keep that momentum in the next 4 quarters. Can they do it against Texas Tech? Can they do it against Oregon? And then you're in the national championship and everyone loves your coach again.
I think like the injuries, they have been riddled with injuries the last few weeks.
Yeah.
So I think this just having this break here, relax, get healthy. If they show up hot, beat Oklahoma, they haven't beaten Oklahoma the last 2 times they played them. So I think that alone, if they can keep that momentum going on to Indiana, yes, has Indiana beaten Oregon and Ohio State? Yeah. But I don't see why Alabama couldn't beat Indiana. Now, I think in that same breath, like you said, I do think Indiana would probably be the team out of all those teams they would have to face that probably could stop either Oklahoma or Alabama there. Yeah. I do think they could get past Oregon because Oregon's a young team and they just haven't been looking. I don't see them win the national championship this year. Tech, that defense, they look a little scary, but we haven't seen we've seen them beat BYU twice. They beat
the brakes off of everybody this year. That's the only thing.
But they just haven't played like a different caliber. They haven't played Oregon. They haven't played Indiana. They haven't played an SEC team like Alabama, Oklahoma. So I think that's going to be that differentiating, equation there for them. So I think right now the whole hot seat, I think with Kalen DeBoer's being named floated around, I think right now, if anything, that team's going to be trying to rally around each other and win these games.
I think that you can look back at the fact that we've seen Alabama's offense be explosive this year in multiple games. Now, the problem is it only is explosive one way, through the air. You can't run the football. And I've had this argument with a lot of people. Well, wait until we finally hit our stride running the football. Guys, it is week 14. You have no stride. This is who you are offensively. So you got to go ahead and figure out what works and what doesn't so that way you're able to build a game plan that is really positive. But I've also seen Ty Simpson play up to a certain standard in big-time moments. He played really well in the first half against Georgia in the first game. He played really well against Tennessee. He played really well on his first road test. He was able to kind of respond afterwards when he faced off against Oklahoma minus the pick 6. There were some things that you really liked about the team to where you feel like that if you get that version and you're able to win with Ryan Williams and Jeremy Bernard and what you got with Isaiah Horton and what you got with Latsier Brooks and Rico Scott, yeah, you probably can get enough momentum to make things interesting against Indiana, Texas Tech, or Oregon. And again, you have an offense that is consistent. I think it's going to be very, very, very consistent against a team that doesn't know what the offense is. So that is a major, I think, feather in the cap of if you get what we saw in the Tennessee game or anything close to that. 4-quarter affair out in Norman, Palace on the Prairie. But you also do have an Oklahoma problem. Like Georgia didn't have Georgia had an Alabama problem up until last week. Alabama has an Oklahoma problem. They've beaten them one time since 2000. And that came in the playoffs a few years ago when Kyler Murray was still playing quarterback. So it's interesting because there's a lot of things that you like about, I think, the team's makeup. But it's like, you know what it reminds me of, dude? Like, you know when you don't really like an artist, but they have like a feature by somebody that you really like? I feel like it's Alabama featuring Jeremy Bernard, featuring Bray Hubbard, featuring Josh Cuevas. I really like those dudes. I think they're really solid players. But Alabama as a whole feels like that there's something missing this year that I just can't put my finger on. And there was a moment that you felt like they could win the national championship, and then they started to lose a little bit of steam, and then the injury started stockpiling up, and slowly but surely you got to see more faults in this roster.
That's what's a bummer is Ty Simpson had all these flashes of like, oh, he could potentially win the Heisman this year. And then boom, you're like, yeah, no, that's not happening. I think running back wise, I mean, they're not doing anything there. They're not going to be able to rush the ball. But receivers, they are so stacked. Okay. If Ty Simpson can air that ball out, they're a scary team. Now, the issue is they're playing against a top caliber defense in Oklahoma, which we've already seen them play. And we've seen Oklahoma win because of their defensive play. Look at Oklahoma when they played LSU. The defense is the only thing that kept them alive in that game.
Oklahoma, let's talk about them. 10-2 season. They get a win over Alabama in the first battle around. They lose to a playoff team in Ole Miss. They also lose to Texas that had 3 top 10 wins this year. And really do want to include a fourth one because of Oklahoma was 6th in the country when they faced off against them. Yeah. You've already said it, dude. This defense is a national championship defense. And the thing that was missing in that game against Alabama that not enough people are talking about, who was not playing on Saturday?
I'm trying to think.
Mason Thomas. Their best pass rusher because he got hurt the week before in the matchup against Tennessee when he got the scoop and score. He's expected back in this game. So when you were winning with Taylor Wine, when you were winning with Robert Spears-Jennings, when you were winning with the linebacker play, when you were winning with the Bowens, that's what you have that is so prominent to where you can feel that national championship defense is going to keep you in games. You got to keep it low. Like, I compare them right now to the Houston Texans. Like, if you can get 20 points, offensively, you got to feel good about your chances of winning the game because your defense is not going to allow more than 17. The problem is, can you get 20 points? And that's kind of where I'm looking at it from the standpoint. You got an offense that's built to win a national championship. You got a defense that's built to win a national championship. And you got an offense that is basically a JV level version of what you see by Pop Warner leagues. Like, that's really what we're seeing at this point.
They almost remind me of Iowa. If you watch Iowa at all this year, defense. I'm saying not I guess offensively to defensively.
Sure.
Now, what sucks for Oklahoma fans is this: you're watching this team that used to be this dominant force offensively, always amazing. The defense trash, completely flip. Where the defense is one of the best in the country, easily, offense can't even hit. They can't do anything.
The other thing is, Oklahoma relies a lot on explosives. Like, they're only going to get 2 or 3 a game, but if they hit, they're going to hit. Yeah. I mean, look at that game against LSU. There was a moment that felt like they were going to be out of the playoff. Everything was wrong. 9-3 season ahead. Kind of now a failed season in the eyes of the public. And then Isaiah Satenga goes off for a 70-yard touchdown. And then Deion Burks goes off for a 60-yard strike. And then you have a big run by John Mateer. And so those explosives of 20-plus yards downfield, that's the saving grace of the offense. Can you do it efficiently at a high enough level? Because you have 3. I think you need 6. You need to be able to
count on that.
Exactly. I think that's
miracle plays.
Because of right now, it feels like if you could just get enough when it comes to something consistently inside the red zone. Well, Tate Sandell is going to be winning the Glue Grozer Award. He's going to be doing that tomorrow. And then on top of that, you also are going to get really good play, I think, from your special teams in general, and they will cause turnovers like they did against Ryan Williams. But you got to get into range. That's the only thing is that you got to get into range. And then if you get that turnover, you have to turn it into points. Because that was the reason they beat Alabama. They were outgained by nearly 200, but they scored 17 points off of turnovers. And that's how you got to be able to win. If somebody is able to get the ball and put you in the opponent's territory, you got to walk away with at least 3. If you can't do that, then you have no shot.
I think early on, if they can defensively stop Alabama and get in their heads really quick, they can control the game.
It wouldn't shock me. Again, Alabama, it's been a house of horrors when they've played up in Norman before. They've had a problem with with Oklahoma before. It does feel like that if this is going to be the time to do it, you want to do it now, because the last thing you want to have is the college football playoff public saying you didn't belong in the playoff over Notre Dame. This is the reason why. Like, even though you went to the SEC championship, and I'm all for, again, for starters, like I was this way. If you have 2 losses and you leave it up to the committee, this committee that is so flawed with its logic and contradicts itself every other time, like, you're not going to have a shot. Like, I don't feel bad for you being left on out. But, like, at the same time, Alabama did its job to get to the SEC title. I didn't think they needed to be penalized. But now that you're in, you got to show that there are things that have changed to where you belong in. Because Notre Dame, whether or not we agree that they belong in with their piss-poor schedule, they were playing hot and they felt like a team that could actually go on a run. So you at least got to make it to the second round. And if not, then you are absolutely going to leave it to the public eye. Moving forward, we can't have this happen again.
I agree 100% with that. I mean, every time I talk about this, everyone's like 3 losses. And it's like, at that point, though, they had to let them in. They had to let Bama in. You cannot punish them for losing the SEC championship.
Well, you want to go ahead and get rid of conference championships, keep Alabama out. Watch how quickly Greg Sankey calls up Tony Petitti and makes this whole thing the round robin tournament. They go to 24 teams and they say, well, 13 or 14 are coming from our 2 conferences that are guaranteed. That's not including the at-large bids like a Vanderbilt or a Texas that can sneak its way on in. So that was something that needed to change. Like, review, make sure that you go ahead and comment down below. Who do you think has the best chance of winning in the first round, or who has the best chance of actually winning the whole thing? And if you want to do so, make sure that you go ahead and visit our friends over at FanDuel, FanDuel.com/SECU. Now is the perfect place to sign on up. Get started with $300 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. The app is free, simple, easy to use, and you don't have to play it with just college football on the Heisman Trophy odds or on any of the college football playoff odds. The numbers are out for 2026 win totals already for teams, and we have college basketball season under ropes. We have college baseball season soon approaching. We have the NBA, we have the NHL, we have the NFL coming to a close. So whatever it is, go visit FanDuel.com/SECU. Get started with $300 in bonus bets when you win your first $5 bet. Alex, okay, let's talk about Heisman odds. We now know that there are 4 contenders going to the Heisman Trophy presentation in the Big Apple on Saturday night. Who do you think was snubbed? Do you like the list? Was there somebody that you want to really see on in?
I like the list. As long as Diego Pavia is on there, that's honestly all I really cared about. If I'm going to be honest with you, that's who I think should win the Heisman. Will he? Different story, but that's who I think should. I don't think anyone got stubbed. If anything, Julian Sayin probably could have been left out to switch somebody in. But other than that, I like Mendoza in there, I like Love in there, and I like Diego Pavia in there. I think they have a good chance.
I really want to see the linebacker. I want to see a defensive player. Jacob Rodriguez is awesome this year. And like, at this point, what you got to basically say is, hey, it's an offensive award. Like, because there's no reason to invite them if they have no shot. Like, I thought the year that Will Anderson was supposed to go, and instead it ended up being Aiden Hutchinson. Like, that and Ndamukong Suh were like the only 2 that you ever felt like had somewhat of a breather, and they ultimately didn't. And Jacob Rodriguez did a lot of good things. Did we need to see another quarterback in there that we knew was going to finish in 4th place? Or could we at least invite the linebacker and said, hey, defensive players matter too?
I agree with that. And also, I mean, they even put him in there to score touchdowns. So they were like, look, You want to see an offensive player do something? We'll throw him in here and get some touchdowns. And they had, I think he had 3 touchdowns this season. So I think I agree with that. Put him in at the 4th spot. Is he going to win it? Probably not. But show some representation. He's earned it. He should be there.
So Diego Pavia is the name that we are spending a lot of time on because of it's an SEC channel. And to be completely transparent, it's hard for me to go in any other direction. I understand that the award is supposed to go to the best player in college football. And if we're just going simply based off of that from a skill set standpoint, it's hard for me to look anywhere but Jeremiah Love. But I look at the impact for a team. And that's something that I think is really important. I've seen Kirk Cignetti lead a team to an 11-1 season without Fernando Mendoza. He did it last year. Now, was it an easy schedule? Take it for a grain of salt. But I've seen him do it. I've seen Notre Dame be successful without having a guy like Jeremiah Love. I've seen teams work with quarterback play that isn't as consistent as Julian Sayin. I haven't seen Vanderbilt get to 10 wins. Nobody has. And that's because of what you had at quarterback. And remember back at the start of the year, dude, he went on all the podcasts and he went around the market and the circuit was like, hey, our goals are to go to the national championship. Our goals are to have the best season in Vanderbilt history, change the culture for our team for the long term. We're going to bring in top tier recruits. We're going to make Vanderbilt the best team possible, and I'm going to win the Heisman Trophy. And like everybody laughed at him. Like Paul Feinbaum quite literally went out of his way to go, okay, that's a really cute story. And you just see like the face of a demon staring through the camera and going, what are you talking about? Like, dude, I'm not joking. This is my goal, and I'm going to make it happen. And outside of losing 2 games, which again, they did. They lost to Texas. They lost to Alabama. That's just the case. He accomplished everything that he set out to do. Best season in program history, 10 wins. Fighting for a college football playoff berth. Absolutely in the conversation. Top 20 offense at times this year. Massive upsets along the way, including one over LSU, including one on the road against Tennessee. Highlight numbers across the board. Over 4,000 total yards of offense. 38 plus touchdowns. Completion percentage over 70%. Also a pass rating over 171. Like, you're just checking off the list of things that you need to see happen for the guy. And guess what? He didn't disappoint. And I think that that's where I turn to when it comes to the Diego Pavia story is, yes, from a player standpoint, he's not the best in college football. Yeah. But from an impact standpoint, I could take out Fernando Mendoza, put another quarterback in, and I don't know if they're 13-0, but I trust Kirk Cignetti that they're going to get there. They're going to at least be still in the conversation. I don't know if I can do that with Diego Pavia and say they're going 10-2.
You take Diego Pavia away from that team, they have a handful more losses, I think. He is solely why, one, like they've come back in games. The only reason they came back in Texas, Diego Pavia. If you watch that Tennessee game, he was just unleashing in that game. Any game you watch, there's a reason he's got the rushing yards that he has. Over 800 rushing yards. Okay, what other quarterback is doing what he's doing right now this season with passing and that? No one is. He leads everyone in offensive yards. Touchdowns he's gotten as well. So I don't know. Did he have that ego to start the season? Yes, but he backed it up. It'd be different if he had the ego and didn't back it up. Game after game after game, he did what he needed to do. Did he have a tough loss against Bama? Yes. But then he kept showing up, doing what he does, and the team loves him. I've seen people give him hate. They're like, oh, he's on TikTok marketing himself. Yeah, he's marketing himself because he's at Vandy. You have to market yourself. But his team love him. They want him to get the Heisman. Thank God he's getting invited to New York. Is that who I want to see win because he's earned it and deserves it? Yes. Coming from New Mexico State, doing all this, that's not easy. Vandy was not the team they were before Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia gets there, complete turnaround for that program.
But let me ask you also, you realize that the reason you're doing the self-promotion is nobody's talking you up at Vanderbilt. Nobody's ever going to give you the appreciation of Vanderbilt. And the reason I feel like it comes off really cocky and Delta Bravo-y is not because of, he's this overall egotistical dude. It's because of, it's from the nerd school. Like if you threw him at Oklahoma and he was acting like Baker Mayfield, people are going to say that he's a clown, he's acting up, but we've seen quarterbacks do that before. You throw him in Kyle Field. Guess what? We've seen a quarterback do that in 2012. You throw him at a school like Texas, or you throw him at a school like Alabama. Guess what? It's moxie, it's swagger, it's potential, but it's Vandy. You're supposed to be the bottom dwellers of the conference. You're supposed to be the easy game. You're supposed to be a tune-up before we have an actual matchup. And yeah, I get it. Texas game would get their one out. They were gassed. And I'll defend Texas on one thing. Like whether or not you say they were gassed, whether or not you say like Joe in the comment section, whether or not you say that they had backups in because of injuries, all that, I completely understand. The one thing I will defend Texas fans on is that 2-point conversion didn't count. Like, I have no idea where you were looking back at that and saying, yep, he crossed the goal line. No, he didn't. Like, it never should have been a 3-point game. Should have been a 5-point win. Yeah. Still, he fought his way back in. And he's had multiple 300-yard passing games this year. And he's fought his way to come on back. And he's won multiple comeback matchups. He's been able to respond in capacity. He's been able to step on up in some of the biggest moments. He's utilized both his arm and his legs. He's built a culture for the long term. And he's changed Vanderbilt, dude. The way that I view this is, if you don't have Diego Pavia, you don't get Jared Curtis.
100%.
If you don't have Diego Pavia, you don't get yourself a quarterback that not only could end up being better physically and tool and mental wise than what you currently have in number 2, But he could be the reason why you have finally turned the corner and put yourself in a position where for the next 4 or 5 years, 8 wins is possible. 9 wins is not out of reach. Every third, fourth year, you're going to be able to get back to this 10-win range. And the other part, dude, I'll tell you right now, if you get yourself a quarterback like Jared Curtis and he delivers in year 1, Vandy becomes a primetime destination for the transfer portal. And they got their money all lined up in NIL. And they got a coach that's very much locked into the program. I don't think he's going anywhere anytime soon. No. So it's like everything is lined up to where you see a wide receiver, 5-star recruit go, I want to catch footballs from this kid. Like, I want to be the reason why First Bank Stadium is going to get another renovation because they got to add 10,000 seats. I want to be a reason why we're hosting a playoff game here for the first time in program history because he needs some wide receiver help. I can be that wide receiver. And that's why I think, again, you build the damn statue. You retire the number. You do all the things that you want to see because of Vandy is not where it is without Diego Pavia's impact. And that's why I think it's so detrimental to the case of you got to believe this is what you're supposed to be the Heisman. I understand it's supposed to go the best player. But I also think this, dude, and this is where my brain also went to for a standpoint and humor me. I think a lot of people thought that Notre Dame was going to be in the playoff. And some of them got their Heisman votes in early. So once they knew who kind of was in the Heisman race, because remember, you had to pick on the Heisman, the top 4 voters, they get to go to New York. I think that they said, well, we're not going to see Diego Pavia in the Heisman trophy. I mean, we're not going to see him in the college football playoff because they're too low. But we'll see Notre Dame in there. I want to give a sympathy vote to Diego Pavia. And maybe that's a cheap answer, but there are some people who probably said, we're going to see Jeremiah Love, we're going to see Julian Sang, we're going to see Jacob Rodriguez, we're going to see Fernando Mendoza, we're not going to see Pavia. Vanderbilt's got to get something. Here's the acumen I'll go ahead and hand on out.
I honestly, I agree with that. What sucks is Vandy's a team where I wish they were in the playoffs right now because of how hot they've looked. It's the second they didn't make it in, I immediately was like, please let Pavia, 1, just make it to New York, and then 2, hopefully win it. But that's where, I think they didn't make it in the playoffs. We're like, okay, let's throw some votes his way. Hopefully that's not the case. Hopefully they did actually, give him a decent bit of votes.
They liked him enough and said, yeah, you're the right guy.
And then they took away all these external factors. Like now, if you go online and see people, you'll see people talking about his family. It's like, let his family enjoy this. There's brothers, sons over here doing something that's never been done at Vanderbilt. If you would have told me a few years ago they're flipping, quarterbacks from Georgia, wide receivers places like Alabama, no, I would not believe you. They're doing that, and it's because of Clark Lee, but also Diego Pavia. Diego Pavia doesn't come back this season with all this stuff going on, this would not be happening.
No, and I think that's the other thing is that it's more than just Diego. I mean, you got to throw in what you have with Clark Lee. He's a Vandy man through and through. That carries a lot of weight. You got to throw in Jerry Kill. He's been a big-time influence on Pavia's life. You got to throw in Tim Beck, who was the offensive coordinator. That gets almost no recognition whatsoever. But all of them working together changed Vanderbilt for the better. A lot of them are going to be back next year. Pavia won't. But you upgraded a quarterback in terms of a skill set. Now, maybe from a mentality standpoint, it's going to take a while to get there. But you do end up landing a player that 5 years ago we would have laughed at. Said, how much are they paying? How much are they paying this dude? Because we knew that they were getting paid back then. What did they give him that Georgia said, no, I'm sorry, we don't have that in the bankroll for us to be able to go ahead and afford? What are they doing to go get him to come here? Oh, no, now it's legal. And they said because of the culture change and because if he wants to start immediately, yeah, I think that I'm pretty much set staying around Nashville. Because he's from the area. And he's like, hey, my family gets to come see me play on weekends. Cool, say less.
I think it's a similar situation with Dylan Raiola leaving and going to Nebraska. But with this one, you're actually seeing a team win 10 wins. Yeah. You're seeing a team do this. And I've been to a game at Vandy. That place did not get packed before. You could not fill the stadium. It's not big, folks. So now they're selling out. People actually are showing up. They are rooting for their team. That's beautiful to see. It's really cool, honestly. If you would have said Vanderbilt's going to be a top leading performing team in college football and one of the best teams in the SEC, I don't think people would believe that.
Overall thoughts. Does he win the award?
I don't think so.
I don't either. Do you think it's Mendoza or do you think it's Jeremiah Love?
I think they're going to give it to Mendoza. I think Mendoza gets it.
You know what it reminds me of? So do you remember when Tua Tagovailoa was, I think, a sophomore, and he had like the breakout year, 2018, and Alabama was really good, but they didn't make the SEC title game, and the Big 12 title game featured Oklahoma, and Kyler Murray went off in that game, and Kyler Murray was awesome. And it felt like the momentum shifted from Tua being the Heisman favorite to Kyler immediately. Like, trust me, Kyler probably still would have won the award, but like I felt like Tua had it locked up. And then came conference championship weekend, and you got to see a little bit more film, and you saw him balling out against Texas, and you're like, crap, here comes the award. And lo and behold, he won the Heisman Trophy. I think that Pavia had the award until we saw Indiana beat Ohio State. And then the second that we saw Mendoza get a couple of those deep shots down the field, and he was able to guarantee an undefeated season, people were like, I got to give it to him. I got to go ahead and give it to him.
I think, too, if that drive didn't happen to end the game against Penn State, he would not be getting the Heisman, too. I think that was something that, like,
I
that
agree.
was the Heisman drive. Everyone said it, and I was like, son of a gun. If he keeps playing like this for the remainder of this season, he gets the Heisman.
Yeah. And like, is it fair? No, but it's the reality of the award. Because there are people out there, dude, that like they vote and they look at stats and they look at like one game film and they're like, that's Heisman moment. And like quite literally, you're saying there's not idiots out there that would actually do that. No, there are.
Yeah.
There are many an idiot who will say that. There are people who no longer work or cover the sport or even watch college football on a regular basis that have a vote. And it's like they're wasting it on potential for really quality players to earn the accolade. And this is not a shot at Fernando Mendoza whatsoever. He's had a great year. Indiana is where it is because of him and Cignetti. It just is really interesting to see the way that Pavia, I think, had the award until he didn't. And I'm not taking that away from Mendoza because Mendoza had to have his moment in the sun to be able to say, this is why I belong. But as an SEC dude and as somebody who has watched this kid grow from being at New Mexico Military Institute, being from Albuquerque, where quite literally he talks about the culture of like, it's so bad in there. Like guys, Breaking Bad was filmed in Albuquerque. Like, do you remember what happened in the show? Like, that's where Pavia's from. And he brought it to Nashville, Tennessee. Like, did you think for 1 second it wasn't going to be a little psycho shit? Like, it was always going to happen that way. And then for him to be able to turn the culture around for a program that, much like Indiana, was the losingest team in the SEC history, it just, to me, seems like that's where you give the award. But then the most losing program in college football history goes 13-0, and it's because of the quarterback and the head coach. It's like, you can't really fight back.
I think we're in a weird age here with just voting in general. Look at the AP poll, for example. I mean, just everything when it comes to football and voting currently, I feel like is a little not the best. And there's people that are voting that probably should not be voting or not even watching the games. I'd assume people are just looking at stats and being like, that's our guy.
Yeah. All right, let's move over to coaching searches right now. There have been multiple moves made throughout the SEC since head coaches have been hired. They're building their staffs. They're trying to bring in some new names. And there have been some names added in who were fired earlier. So let's start off with the big one. It's not yet announced, but is expected. Jim Knowles, Penn State defense coordinator, will be replacing Tim Banks at Tennessee. Now remember, Jim Knowles was part of Ohio State's defense that won a national championship. Before that, he was a part of a top 10 defense down at Oklahoma State. The dude knows defense. He was supposed to be the final missing piece for the team out in Happy Valley. It was a sad season. They lost 3 straight games. They fired their coach. They bring in Matt Campbell, who probably should have been the first phone call. He was like the 59th phone call. And so now Jim Knowles needs a job. There's a lot of positivity traction for this job, in my opinion. I think when it comes to a guy like Jim Knowles, just because of what the track record has said about his pathway, how he's been able to win at different schools, and how he's been able to develop talent, not just in the secondary, but also in the pass rush.
I like it. I mean, I remember seeing when he went from Ohio State to Penn State, and people were so upset. They're like, why would you make this move? And honestly, like, it's almost, I like the fact that Penn State had such a bad season, so now he can move to Tennessee. This Tennessee team needs someone like Jim Knowles. And I think, like you're saying, Oklahoma to Ohio State, seeing that what he's done there positively, I think it's going to be a very quick transition to turn that defense around for a team that drastically needs it. Tennessee needs an overhaul right now, defense, and I think he is the person that can do that. I think it's going to be a lot of work and it's going to be pretty aggressive, but I think if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be him.
The thing that I really like about him is there is a proven track record at multiple schools of being able to go make drastic changes and almost immediately. And he's been a reason why teams have been able to get really hot at the right time. I think that it's going to be interesting to see how his system kind of breaks on in. Because remember, this is a team that loves to use 3 safeties. This is a team that loves to be very aggressive with the defense back play. And to be completely transparent, Tim Banks was really good when it came to scoring defense, red zone defense, tackles for losses. The front 7 was awesome. The secondary was hit and miss his entire tenure out in Knoxville. I mean, there were so many open holes. Like, I remember there was a point this year where I remember watching and saying, okay, well, if it's not Colton Hood making the play, it's a touchdown. Like, just wide open spaces. That's not the way that you play in a Jim Knowles defense. But if it ends up hitting its stride in like a year from now, you're always going to trust Heupel offensively. I think that's what this comes back to, is that Heupel offensively is the key to where you're going to score a lot of points. Can you give up fewer points? Can you give up fewer yards? And eventually go from that being able to score a lot of points to, hey, maybe we won't score 53. We'll score 42. But instead of giving up 41, we're going to give up 34. And then instead of giving up 34, we're going to give up 21. And if we only give up 21 points per game and we're still scoring 43, we're doubling opponents. We're still very dynamic in the passing attack. We're still able to trust our run game. And our defense is getting pressure on the quarterback and then creating turnovers at midfield, and they're putting us in a better position to strike. That's what you're going to get with Jim Knowles. It's not going to be an overnight fix, but it's a really, really, I think, aggressive move to kind of countercorrect some things that have really hurt your team in years past.
I think that team, they stay half. If that defense goes like half better than where they currently are, they don't lose a game. With how the offense has been playing, even with turnovers, I think they'll be set.
I mean, last season, Tennessee gave up 28.8 points per game, 395 yards per game. Both were in the bottom 3 of the SEC. At Ohio State, number 1 ranked defense in scoring, number 1 ranked defense in total defense. When he was also at Oklahoma State, top 10 defense in scoring, top 10 defense in total yards allowed. So a lot of things that are drastically different than what Tennessee's accustomed to seeing. And I think that's automatically a win, because if you had to make some type of switch. Ryan Walters, I thought, was going to get the job. I said Shield Wood be my pick for the job, but I really do think that if you're swinging for Jim Knowles, you're getting a dude who you believe is not only an upgrade over Tim Banks, but it's an upgrade and setting a tone in the SEC. It's like, we know what we can do offensively. Like, we know they can be great offensively. Now we got to worry about them, what they're going to do defensively. That's kind of where you're kind of sitting back and going, all right, this is going to be really interesting. Another interesting team is South Carolina. They land Kendall Briles. Top 40 scoring offense the last 3 years at TCU. Top 40 total offense the last 3 years at TCU. He's had stops everywhere from Baylor to Houston to FAU underneath Lane Kiffin. It's a night and day difference from what they ran with Mike Shula. The way that I view it is, if you look at what you're running when it comes to Kiffin's offense and when you're running with Heupel's offense, it's the first edition of what both of those have kind of derived off of. Okay. So it's more air raid, but it is also very much, I think, a veer and shoot type of style where you need to be able to run the football efficiently. You need to be able to win with deep shots down the field. You got to be able to have really good wide receivers, and you got to have a quarterback that can launch it deep. But if you have those things, you throw in the mobility. Remember, he was in Arkansas that one year with KJ Jefferson and Rocket Sanders. That was a really dangerous duo in the backfield. You got a quarterback that maybe wants to come on back in the Norris Sellers. If not, you got a couple of young guys like Landon Duckworth, and you got Aaron Nolan. You got a few others in the building. There's going to be a lot of things that you need to fix, but I do think that this is an interesting hire, because here's the big thing, dude. Like, Shane Beamer's always hiring his buddies. Now it's like, hey, I'm not hiring my buddies. I'm on the hot seat. I'm on the hottest seat probably in the SEC going into next year. I got to swing big for this hire. And I think that they nailed it in that standpoint.
I think this was a make or break hire for Shane Beamer, because they have to win now. If he does not have a good start of the season next season, he's out. I think the biggest thing is, does Lenoris Sellers stay in Columbia? That's, I think, the question everyone wants to know right now. Does he stay? I think if he stays, that offense will click. I don't think it's going to be super flashy and crazy at the start there. I don't think we're going to see anything like off the chain. But I think with that movement there, we've seen him, like you said, TCU. KJ Jefferson did some magical stuff at Arkansas. I think if you can recreate and replicate that success over here with Lenoris Sellers, this team will be amazing. Now, you need to start at running back. You need to answer that part, because if it's just Lenoris Sellers slinging it, you're going to have an issue. So I think if they can get that part, have both sides going, they'll be okay.
What I'm interested in is seeing how quickly they can fix the offensive line. Because again, he's bringing over his offensive line coach from TCU, which is a really big deal. They also got to be able to run the football. That's why you're bringing Stan Drayton. Stan Drayton was awesome when he was at Texas. He's developed some of the biggest names in college football when it comes to running backs, including Ezekiel Elliott, Bijan Robinson. He just worked with Katron Allen and Nick Singleton at Penn State. So there's going to be some growth, but you got to hit in the transfer portal. I think that they're good at wide receiver when it comes to depth, but I need a veteran with experience if Nick Harbor's leaving. So they got to target some names, but that offensive line's got to change. Dude, like, can you tell me who was worse than them when it came to pass protection this year?
I think it depends on the game. Texas was pretty bad in that Florida game, if you watched that one. But, I mean,
I'll spare you the trouble. There was not a single Power 4 team worse than them in college football. They were the worst offensive line in college football this year. So outside of Josiah Thompson, because I think that they still believe he can be a cornerstone piece, they got to build everyone else on the offensive line. I mean, just like literally everybody else. And then they got to bring in some other weapons around him to be a good supporting cast.
The good thing with Shane Beamer, they can get guys in the transfer portal. They can get guys signing day. They can get the guys. I do agree you need a star wide receiver one veteran, okay? You need to get like the Ricky Parasol when they got him for Florida. You need someone like that. You need to go and get a one. Now, where they go and grab that person, I don't know.
I'll tell you right now, I'm interested to see, and I heard this name be floated around, but Kansas State's J.C. Brown may enter the portal. Really interesting fit. He can do a little bit of everything. He's good with route concepts. He's good with route running. Doesn't drop many balls. I'd make a play for him if he was in the portal. The big question is Kansas State going to match that NIL deal? But they still got Mazeo Bennett if he wants to come back for another year. You still potentially have Nick Harbor if he wants to come back for another year. Dude, you got to handle the droughts better. I mean, that's just the case because that one drop that hung in the air forever in the Palmetto Bowl, that led to the ultimate disaster scenario for Illinois Sellers. And then he had the fumble in that matchup too. Like, there's so much to like about him. And there's so much that you look back and go, you were the reason why this play altered and we ended up losing the game. So he can change it, but you still got some young guys in there like Lex Cyrus. You still have Jaden Sellers, who I think is not going anywhere. Donovan Murph, Brian Rowe. So somebody's got to step on up, but I do think that you need to bring in a veteran experienced play caller. I mean, a veteran experienced wide receiver. And there are going to be some names out there. A name that is back at a place that he just was a few years ago, John David Baker out at Ole Miss. Now, the interesting thing is that he had a really dynamic offense this past year. Like, you look at the numbers for ECU, they went 8-4, but it wasn't because of the offense and the slide. It actually was because of the defense. The team this year, 14th in total offense, 25th in passing, 25th in scoring, 29th in rushing, 9th in first downs, 11th in third down conversions, 11th in explosive plays. They struggled in one area, red zone efficiency. And most of their numbers were right up there with Power 4 teams. They were actually better than Texas. They were better than Alabama. They were better than Georgia at times. They were right there with Ole Miss when it came to scoring opportunities, not passing, but still pretty dang close. And the explosive plays down the field. It's not Lane Kiffin. It isn't. Nobody is. What I will say is there's a lot to like about him and the standpoint of it's a similar offensive concept to where a lot of the kids that may enter the transfer portal or be thinking about entering the transfer portal, well, we already ran this offense before.
Right.
We already know what this offense is. There's going to be a few tweaks here and there, but we've shown that we can be successful. I think I might want to stick around and see what happens.
And I mean, I think ECU was averaging over 30 points a game. I mean, they were dominant this year. Had some tough losses, but I mean, that's all these guys want to see. They want to see that we can score points. I think you go to a place like Ole Miss, you have the talent, and I think he's the right person to call the plays and do everything like that. I think it's a home run hire. Like you said, you can't replace Lane Kiffin. That's a really hard person to replace offensively. But I think they got the next best guy that they could get at OC. Now, hopefully, I think this Ole Miss, they can keep those guys around. The sad thing there is a lot of people go there, develop, and then leave. If they don't do that and actually stay put, I think they'll have a dominant and aggressive offense this next season, which they've looked really, really good with Lane Kiffin. Hopefully, keep Pete Golan over there defensively, defensive-minded coach, and then go get a good OC. I think they're okay.
The thing that I always worry about when it comes to not having Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss anymore is the transfer portal, because he was the portal king, and his identity was the reason why kids want to come down to Ole Miss, be developed, and end up having a shot to go to the NFL. And the thing that I always was so interested at, Alex, was he hit a lot. Like a lot of the players that he would go after, they'd make it to the NFL. They may be a 6th-round pick, but when they were at their previous school, they were a nobody. They were undrafted free agent, looking at spring league, looking at CFL, and then they ended up turning into an all SEC talent. Is that development, or is that just knack of knowledge of what works for an offense? Because where I think you're going to have the question when it comes to John David Baker.
I think it's just, Lane Kiffin is just a whiz in the portal, and also just finding guys and then seeing that he can develop them. Like, look at Trinidad Shambles. He knew that guy was going to be something great. He is. Didn't hesitate to throw him in.
Like, the dude couldn't break on the field last year at Mizzou. And now it's like he's the most taught about running back in college football, not named Jeremiah Love. I mean, he's like, that's what we're talking about. And that's where I'm at with John David Baker. Because I think that Pete Golding will do a good job of retaining defensive talent.
Yeah.
Will he develop it is a big question. But it's the offensive side that we've been talking about. Like, I mean, who finds a trade out of Chambliss and a Trey Harris and then go, one dude's going to be a semifinalist for the Biletnikoff and one dude should be considered a Heisman Trophy finalist? Lane does that. It's very hard to duplicate that stuff.
Yeah, I don't see them being able to do that, but hopefully they can keep those guys. We'll see. I do have a feeling that LSU is going to grab a few of them, though, sadly.
Let's go to Lexington, Kentucky. Will Stein is now the head coach. Really smart hire. He is not going to be calling plays. And instead, Joe Sloan is going to be calling plays. I don't know how to feel about that one, dude. Because of a part of me is like, this is really interesting. Joe Sloan's been a part of systems to develop quarterbacks. He was on Brian Kelly's staff working with Jaden Daniels. He got him to become a Heisman caliber quarterback. And then Mike Denbrock goes to Notre Dame and they're like, here, let's promote you. And let's see if you can do the same thing now with Garrett. And it's like, well, no, you can't. And Nussmeier is, listen, I'll be the first to say I was a little bit too high on Nussmeier going into the year. I'm okay with that. So be it. But there were just some things to where it was play calling. It was bad mix-ups. And then it felt like there was a moment where like, hey, they wanted Joe Sloan fired. Brian Kelly said, no, it's my team. I'm running the show. Okay, well, we're going to fire Joe Sloan. And now we're going to fire you. And now we're going to bring Lane Kiffin on over to Oxford because of your attitude. And now he's in Lexington running the show with Will Stein. He is going to be calling the offense. Have you seen their schedule for next year, dude?
Oh, they're going to get smacked.
Dude, it is the brutalest schedule, I think, in the SEC. Like, they're at Arkansas level, hold your children and pat them to sleep kind of mentality. Like, just kiss them goodnight because you're never going to see them again. That's how bad it looks next year.
I don't have them doing well next year, so I think, Will Stein, home run hire for Kentucky, especially with how late they were in the coaching search. Joe Sloan, I don't think it's going to be anything special for him. I think they're going to have a not great season coming up here. I just don't expect them to have a bunch of crazy upsets. We'll see what their defense can do, but I just don't see them winning a lot of those games.
Yeah. The good news is this is going to be a year, I think, of retooling the entire identity of Kentucky. So if you got to throw somebody under the bus, you got your scapegoat. So that's kind of a good thing. I am going to be interested to see what they do at the quarterback position. They were able to re-sign several players that were, decommitted to the program before early signing period. Do you go after a transfer portal quarterback? Do you ride it out with Cutter Boley? How do you build around Cutter Boley? Going to be some interesting things, dude. I mean, like, that to me is where we're going to have a conversation on how quickly can you build your identity offensively. And also the thing that I look at is, what do you want your offensive identity to be compared to what it was when you were at Oregon? Like, were you fully on board with what you were running, or did Dan have a say in it? Because now it's your team. And how quickly do you want to change things up now with Joe Sloan calling the shots?
I'm excited just to see the difference from this offense compared to Mark Stoops. I think it's going to be very different, and I'm excited just to see that transition and the transformation for the team. So hopefully they move along quicker than taking over one season. I don't want to be second season and now we're actually starting to see this identity is starting to come together. I think that's going to be what's going to happen, though, sadly.
Zach Arnett is back in Starkville. I don't know how to feel about that. Like, you know what it reminded? Like, the Brent Pry news took over my Twitter feed for a couple days because of just, hey, it felt like so much. Remember the Titans? No, it felt like remember the Titans coach Yost. Like, hey, you're not the head coach anymore, but I want to stay on my staff as defense coordinator. I want titles here. I did a good job here. Yeah, well, you could be my defense coordinator or shove it. It's like, okay, that's what it is. Well, Zach Arnett gets promoted after the passing of Mike Leach. Terrible job as a head coach.
Yeah.
Coleman Hutzler comes on in with Jeff Levy. Terrible defense coordinator. They then say, we're going to bring him on in. He is going to now be our defense coordinator. But there have been some bad stories about him out in Starkville. There have been a lot of negative connotation about what he did to the program, how far he set back the program from what it was underneath Mike Leach and where it was trending towards. Will Rogers hates him. Like, quite literally, he has gone on record saying how he's destroyed his identity.
Jeez.
Do you like this or no?
I think if you have all that baggage on top of it, I think it's a bad move. Because the thing is, it's always those skeletons are always going to be on top of everything. Everyone's always going to be thinking about all those things. And also they're going to be asking the questions like, what's changed? What is going to change? You know, the positive there is the familiarity with him. You know what I mean? He knows what he wants to do, but we've already seen the story, right? So it's like, why bring the story back?
I think when you look at it from the standpoint of the defensive coordinator part, just as defense coordinator, it's slightly different.
Right.
This is the guy who, number one, has the respect of Jeff Levy. So automatically, that's a massive win. When you look at his numbers when he was the defense coordinator there, it was a pretty overall solid unit. They were top 65 in every single category during his tenure when he was the defense coordinator. They had multiple draft picks there. They had a first-round pick when it was Emmanuel Forbes. You're upgrading entirely from what you have with Hutzler. They went 118th in scoring to 95th in scoring. Now you get into the top 65. You got to hit big in the portal. It's just the way things ended that I think is the part that's holding me back. Because I don't think it's a bad hire, but it's everything that comes with it. It's like, you know that she's a really hot girl and that you want to take her out on a date, but you've heard the stories and you know that there is a lot of baggage that comes with it. Is it worth it at the end of the day? Do you really want to be waking up in the hospital bed? Do you really want to be going to jail? Is it worth it? Is it? That's how I feel like with Zach Arnett.
It makes me think of Arkansas and just the motorcycle. Whenever I think of Arkansas right now, I just think of the motorcycle. You know, that's all people have to think about. And it's the same thing I think right now with this.
Let's go to we'll close things out with your team, Florida. Number one, I've already told you this, dude. I think that John Summerall was the best hire of the offseason. I will die on that take. And I think that right now, Florida should be elated on what he's been able to do. Because if he may have landed the best offensive coordinator hire of the offseason, Buster Faulkner is leaving Atlanta. He's going to Gainesville. I mean, night and day different of offensive personnel switches of what we're going to see from what we saw last year with Billy Napier to now.
I think the first thing John Summerall said, he was like, I want to hire an OC. I want to get us an OC in this building. And what did everyone want when we had Napier there? We wanted an OC. We were sick of Napier. And I think getting him, we're going to see we're going to go back to, I think, the roots of Florida football. We're going to see the play that we want to we've been dying to see. What we've been missing for years now. I think John Summerall was a home run hire. I was so happy to get him. We saw what he's done at Troy. We've seen what he's done at Tulane. And so, I mean, he has the track record. In both places he went to, very different program building. So I think for Florida, it's going to be a lot easier of a process. If he can keep players from transferring out, I think the build's going to be a quick one where we could see, honestly, a massive change season one in Florida doing really well, especially offensively.
So let me break this down for you, dude. When you look at the numbers from Georgia Tech this past year,
insane.
12th nationally in total yards per game, 10th nationally in yards per play, 7th nationally in red zone offense. He was a finalist for the Burroughs Award. On top of that, he changed the entire identity of what you saw with Haynes King, because Haynes King was a project coming on into Georgia Tech, and he ended up being one of the best quarterbacks in the ACC. He was a consistent quarterback. You got a quarterback down in Gainesville right now who needs a fresh start. I thought personally that fresh start was coming in the transfer portal. It may end up coming now with Buster Faulkner being his play caller. And I think that's a massive win because it changes the identity of how he does things. And the other thing that I will say that I really, really love about this dude, he likes to run the football. He likes to run the football.
Mhm.
And you got a dude who I continuously was screaming at the
Feed
television.
him.
Dude, there's a reason he wears 13. It's unlucky to tackle Jaden Baugh. Run the damn freaking ball every opportunity you get. And you got that now with the dude, I think, in Buster Faulkner, who's going to come up with some game plans to say, hey, 13? You've already had 35 carries. Can you give me a 36? How about 37? How about 39? You got 40 in you? Let's see what you got 40 tonight. We want to win a top 10 game.
That's what made me happy with John Summerall when he was talking about Baugh in his press. He was like, dude, keep doing the ball. Let him. I want to see him run more. Let him run again. Just let him keep running the ball. That was even frustrating with Dan Mullen there. It's like, we want to see these guys run. We got these weapons. Let them go. We keep Baugh. I'm super excited. I think this Lagway stays. Oh my goodness. And we keep like Wilson too. Our wide receiver core, that's so good. So I think I am very, if we keep that offense together and the defense, I'm very excited to see what he does.
I think that you look at what you currently have on the roster. I think of what a place like Florida can do if the NIL money is there to bring in some transfers. I think that the fact that you were able to retain enough of your recruiting class, that there is at least a good standpoint on a foundation in place. I'm not going to say Florida will be a playoff team next year. I won't go that far. But I do think that they can be competitive enough to where an 8-win season is not that far out of reach. I think that a 7-win season should be the bare minimum expectation. I think that a guy like Buster Faulkner, who some people wanted to be a head coach at a G5 level, you pay him enough money to stick around, you get the results. By 2027, this may be a night and day different roster to where you feel pretty damn good about the overall identity. Now, the big thing is you have to be able to retain the talent that's already on the staff.
Yeah.
You can't lose Bob. I don't think you're losing Bob. Dallas Wilson, Vernell Brown, those guys, that's where the question comes on in.
I think we keep Vernell Brown. I think he's locked in from what I've heard. And I think Wilson's just, he's the one person where everyone's like, every time he posts on anywhere, you see Oregon fans going crazy. They're like, come back, come to us. So we'll see. I think we keep, but if we keep all those weapons, oh my goodness. Dallas Wilson, when he was playing in games this year, good God.
Dude, I said at the start of the year, he was going to be this season's Jeremiah Smith. I was so excited about that. And then 2 games in, I was like, all right, well, that prediction
it was unfortunate. It was unfortunate this year. I mean, I think so many players on so many teams, I was like, oh, they're going to win the Heisman. Oh, they're going to have a breakout crazy year. None of that panned out for any of the guys I was hoping for.
Nah, it sucked. Alex, good show, dude. Very good job tonight. I'm beyond thankful that I had a good co-host to kind of steer the ship with me for the last 90 minutes. Let's get to some questions and comments before we get on out of here. Blake Baker's going to eat Joe Sloan alive next season. Yep. Already could say that. By the way, dude, you want to hear a crazy story? The Blake Baker saga of him getting the Tulane job and then coming back to LSU and how quickly they panicked. I mean, Tulane, in my opinion, is like the premier job in the G5 level. Like, it's number 1, it's New Orleans. Number 2, it's in the state of Louisiana. There's going to be a lot of kids that look at that as a great location. If you don't get into LSU, a lot of good transfer portal news. You should be able to kind of handpick who you want. And they landed on Baker. Baker's like, you know what? I'm going to stay at LSU. I like what I'm doing as just defense coordinator. And to go from Blake Baker to Will Hall, I mean, how quickly you see that motivation die before a playoff run. Like, people are already like, okay, we have nothing to look forward to because we can't have John Summerall anymore. And now we're bringing in a coach that was terrible at Southern Miss. And the guy that we were potentially going to hire in Charles Huff, he's going to a rival school. And he turned around the school that Will Hall was just at and got him to 7-5. Like, that is where, like, the body shuts down.
When I saw that hire, the coaching change there, I was just like, you've got to be. And then Charles already leaving USM. He was there for 1 season. He's like, move on to bigger, better, greater things. But we saw what he did at USM.
Yeah.
It was not great. And so I do think they hit the panic button. They're like, we need someone now. Boom. We have our guy. I even saw the Coach O thing floating around. There's a potential he might go to Florida. Coach O, if his son goes over there.
Is he really?
His son apparently could follow Summerall, and he said that he would be willing to go to Gainesville. So
is he not going to go? Is he not going to go back to what's it called?
LSU.
You're not going to go back to LSU and work with Lane?
We'll see. I mean, I do think I wouldn't be surprised if he did follow his son. But we'll see if his son follows Summerall. I don't know if he does.
So I
would like to see him at LSU.
So I do have an interesting thing for you before we end the show. There's an update on a hire in Atlanta.
Oh, what do we miss?
Chip Kelly, potentially Georgia Tech's offensive coordinator.
See, I was thinking that Florida would make a run for Chip Kelly, to be honest.
I thought that too. That was my first thing that I said. I thought they were going to go after Chip Kelly. Welcome back to college football, man.
Wow.
Honestly, you know what? Good for Chip. I know he wanted to go to the NFL, but he feels like a college dude. And I'm glad that he's in the college game.
He does good in the college level. I don't know why he keeps going back to the NFL, does terrible, and then gets the can. Like, stay where you're good. Stay college.
Just why do you, like, I get it. The money's good. You don't have to recruit. You only got to call plays, but still, you do a damn good. Like, even as a head coach, you weren't terrible at UCLA. You were pretty freaking good. For what the standard is out there to get to multiple top 25 rankings and 8-win seasons, yeah, you'll take that. And now he's just going to be a play caller down in Georgia Tech. And unfortunately, Georgia Tech I had as my dark horse to go to the college football playoff. I threw money on them early on this year, and then they decided to cost me with a 9-3 season. So great. Now I'm going to double down on Georgia Tech next season. Congratulations on winning my money, FanDuel. I appreciate that.
I'm curious to see how they are next season, honestly.
It'll be interesting. All right. And on the live stream there, we've been going for about an hour and 30 minutes. Let's put a pin in it. Alex, welcome to the SEC Unfiltered family. Did a great job on your first live stream. Kept up with me, which I appreciate. Kept the energy up, which I think is also really cool. We are back on Sunday. Chris Phillips and I, Overtime Drive. Don't miss it. Like, review, hit subscribe. Follow me at Mr. Cole Thompson. Alex, let the good people know where they can follow you.
Alex Durtervie. Just search up my name. That's where you find me.
And you can always follow us at secunfiltered.com. Download the podcast version of the show wherever you get your podcast listening systems and check out all of our great work found at secunfiltered.com. For Alex Durtervie, I'm Cole Thompson. You have a good rest of your hump day night. Have a good rest of your week. We'll see you on Sunday. College football playoff predictions underway. Who we taking in the national championship? Come back on Sunday. We'll talk to you soon. Have a good rest of your week.
See you later.
Peace.